Welcome to the Jameson Files. I'm your host, Carrie Weber, and I'm so happy to be back with you for another episode. If you're just learning about the Jameson Files and are looking for a way to really tune in and stay up to date when we launch new episodes, I want to invite you to join us wherever you listen to podcasts, to subscribe to the Jameson Files, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. You can also find us on video on our Jameson Facebook page and as well as on YouTube. And for those of you that are a part of the Jameson community, you can find the Jameson Files videos on Grow, our online learning platform. So I invite you to go find our library of interviews and insights and resources on Grow so that you can continue to develop and tap into the resources that we have been building on that site for you for the last 2 years. So today I want to talk about a subject that it has always been and continues to be a point of pain in your practices, and that is broken appointments and no-shows. And what we always call that is the hole in the bucket, right? We do all of this work to fill your bucket, to fill that schedule, and all it takes is to have some holes in that bucket that start to pour it out of the bottom, and it makes for a very exhausting and frustrating day when you are continuously trying to fill those voids that are coming into your schedule. So you may be looking for that magic bullet that's going to help you reduce those broken appointments and no-shows completely forever and ever. And the bad news is, let's start with the bad news first. The bad news is, I can't stand here and tell you that you can eternally remove broken appointments and no-shows out of your schedule. But what we can do is we can start to be more proactive about our scheduling processes, our patient experience, and our communication skills to help reduce those broken appointments and no-shows, while at the same time being proactive in having ways on hand to fill the voids should they unfortunately come your way. So to start things off, as we start thinking proactively, I want you to start thinking about your systems in your practice that support effective scheduling and the reduction of broken appointments and no-shows. I want you to think about your systems, and then I want you to think about your skill sets, your verbal skills, your confirmation processes, your follow-up processes, all of these pieces of the puzzle that, when brought together, help to build a strong foundation for effective scheduling to take place and to stick. One of my favorite books is Atomic Habits by James Clear. I quote it all the time, so I'm sorry if I'm going to be repetitive here. But what Mr. Clear says is, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And so if you feel like the hamster in the hamster wheel, day in and day out, constantly having to battle keeping your schedule in place and intact, then there could be a likelihood that we need to take a step back and take a look at the systems of scheduling and of supporting scheduling in your practice in order to be more effective and consistent in your scheduling experiences, so that those patients that you are scheduling see the value of that appointment, they keep that appointment, and they stay loyal in your practice, because that's the goal, right? So let's start thinking of our approach to scheduling, our approach to reducing broken appointments and no-shows as proactive instead of reactive. There's a chance that this is a continuous pain point for you in your practice, that you are living in what they would call reactive mode. You are entering every day in that reactive, responsive way, knowing you're going to have to fill those voids, knowing you're going to have to be turning on a dime, and knowing that this chaos is going to ensue in your day. And I want to start thinking proactively, taking the offense on my system so that I am in control. I'm in control of our schedule, and we are working as a team to support the schedule and to support the patient's sense of value for being a part of that schedule, right? So start thinking proactively instead of reactively. And you may say, yeah, easy for you to say, Carrie. You're not sitting here trying to fill voids in the schedule as I listen to you right now. Well, then we need to really take a look at our schedule. We need to look at how you're scheduling and if you're doing it effectively and in the best way possible for consistency in your days. So at Jameson, we teach what we call the essentials of scheduling. I'm going to briefly overview what we consider some of those essentials right here. But if you want deeper dives in the essentials of scheduling, then I encourage you to go to the Grow online learning platform that we have at Jameson. It's grow.jmsn.com. And there's an entire learning pathway where one of our advisors, Drew Halverson, walks you through the essentials of scheduling and how to start incorporating this into your scheduling system. If you're a Jameson client listening to this, this will not be foreign to you. You may need a refresh. So if you do, reach out to your advisor and request this at one of your upcoming sessions with your Jameson advisor. But for all of us here as a part of the Jameson Files podcast community, let's review them briefly. At Jameson, these are some of what we call the essentials of scheduling. We want to be scheduling for a production goal. Why? Because if we know what we need to be scheduling for day in and day out to have consistency and to be able to keep the doors open, reward our team, reward yourselves, doctors, whatever the case may be, woo, that makes for a smoother flowing business. So schedule to a production goal and let the entire team know this. In our daily huddles, we should be reviewing what production we are scheduled to that day. Have we met or exceeded goal? Have we yet to meet goal? What did we schedule for yesterday? What are we scheduled for tomorrow? So that we can be working as a team toward helping the pursuit of the goals you've set for your practice. So schedule for a production goal. Schedule doctor time and assistant time. Why? Because an effective schedule has got a doctor really scattered, almost like what we call dovetailing, where it's like steps, where he or she is never in a position where they are supposed to be at the same place in two places at the same time. Does this make sense? So if we know in our procedures what portion of those procedures and appointments are actual doctor time and what increments are actually assistant time, then we can more effectively stagger the schedule so that your doctor doesn't have to be Superman or Superwoman and fly around the practice all day, ultimately leading you to run behind schedule, maybe. And so what we can do is we can be more intentional and proactive in how we're scheduling to make room for the attention and the presence that is demanded of our doctors, our assistants, our hygienists, our entire team with our patients. If we're wanting to build value for appointments, those patients need to feel that value, and the way we're scheduling our doctors and our team can help that. We want to be maximizing our scheduling software. So if you are not absolutely maximizing that, and you may say, no, yes, I am absolutely maximizing Dentrix. Well, I think Dentrix trainers would beg to differ with you. So there's a likelihood that you are grossly underutilizing the tools that you have available to you to effectively schedule, to stay in communication, to fill voids in the schedule, and so on. So it may be that we need to be real with ourselves about how well we're utilizing the tools and technology and software you have available to you. I want to mention also in this moment that you likely have patient communication software that you are underutilizing in terms of confirming appointments, checking on patients that might be running a little behind, refilling voids in the schedule, and so on. So do the work, train on the tools, and be better. If we can maximize these tools, they're going to help you in your time management and in your execution of these systems. Detail each appointment. We find a lot of times that documentation is subpar in practices. So make sure we're detailing each appointment so that everyone on the team that's involved in that appointment knows what they're preparing for. And that helps us in time management and in execution of our appointments. Schedule a variety of procedures. Anybody ever have that day where it's a lot of really quick fill it in, fix it up kind of appointments, and that by the end of the day you are toast. You're exhausted and you have no production to back up the day. It sure felt busy and productive, but it really wasn't because we're not scheduling for a variety of procedures. Also, your doctors will probably prefer to do a variety of procedures within their days. Would you agree, doctors? So let's be more intentional in how we're filling the schedule every day. Pre-block. There's a lot of you that do this, and there are some of you that don't. And if you don't know what I'm talking about pre-blocking, then you need to go watch the Essentials of Scheduling pathway on Grow, because this is a really important piece. Primary, secondary, tertiary appointments, so that we can be scheduling to a variety of procedures in the day, and we can be scheduling to a productive goal. And instead of having these peaks and valleys of days on your schedule, you have more consistency and you're growing in more of a consistent pace. That is healthy scheduling. We want to make sure we're making room for the doctor hygiene evaluations. Again, remember, when your doctors are having to be in 2, 3, 4 places at one time, they're typically not at least 2 or 3 of the places they're supposed to be, right? So we need to be thinking, when you're in the daily huddle, when you're scheduling appointments, when, where, and how can we execute the evaluations so that they are as proactive and as intentional as possible? Because you know what? Those are very important moments in the patient's interactions with you and their experience that will build value for future appointments. If they don't see the value of being there, why are they going to honor the next time they're supposed to be there? So make sure you are intentionally thinking through those hygiene evaluations and making room in your schedule for emergencies, blocking time for emergencies, and making sure that in our daily huddles, if you find that you're seeing too many emergencies, where are we going to fit them? How many can you see in a day, and when and where would it be most appropriate to see an emergency? So that is a very fast down and dirty review of some of the essentials that we need to be thinking about and being proactive about in our scheduling processes. And that is the foundation in which we want to build a patient's experience and a patient's appointment on, so that we can be more successful in retaining appointments and not having so many patients fall through the cracks in broken appointments and no-shows. So let's talk about, when it comes to broken appointments and no-shows and reducing them, what are 3 keys that we can focus on, refine, improve, implement in our practice and in our days and in our performance to help? Number 1, strong verbal skills. From the time you schedule an appointment, when you confirm an appointment, when the patient goes through an appointment, when they're checking out of an appointment, and we're scheduling them for the next appointment. All of these patient interactions, the verbal skills we use are either going to build value for the appointment that they are in at the moment and what they're going to commit to next, or it's going to diminish a sense of value in that. So your verbal skills are key. The patient checkout. The patient checkout is actually a very important piece of ensuring that that patient's going to come to the next appointment. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And then having a solid safety net in place and processes in place that you can tap into when those voids do indeed occur. So let's talk about strong verbal skills. Remember, the ADA Health Policy Institute tells us in their consumer-facing surveys that the reason patients delay or don't accept treatment or aren't staying active in your practice is either cost, time, or fear. So when we know this, we can actually be proactive in our conversations about this as well. Remember, if we go through what we call a healthy patient practice partnership and are in conversation and in continuous communication with our patients and are comfortable with talking about their concerns, their obstacles, their objections, there is a stronger likelihood that they are going to feel valued, they're going to feel the value, and they're going to see a way forward for them to stay active in your practice, to complete that treatment, or whatever the case may be. We don't want them to be in a fight or flight mode where they feel overwhelmed, where they don't feel heard, where they're just they're giving you a false yes so they can escape the conversation. So we need to continuously work on our verbal skills to overcome these obstacles and to partner with our patients so they're in a healthy place of emotion and logic to help them make the right decisions for their ongoing health. Remember, at Jameson, what we consider the 4 pillars of a healthy patient practice partnership are trust, need, urgency, and value. We want to be building these pillars of trust, a sense of need, a sense of urgency, and that sense of value with every interaction with our patients. So a game changer in your verbal skills are going to be your telephone skills. Oh yes, the telephone. So what I want you to start thinking about, the one piece I want you to start thinking on, working on, incorporating is, Weak words versus power words. So what do I mean by that? I want you to start being more aware of what you're saying on the telephone when you're scheduling these appointments with the patients and when you're confirming appointments with the patients. I want you to have a heightened sense of awareness and then to reflect on those conversations and think, how could I elevate the sense of value in that conversation? I want you to elevate from being a retail-minded vocabulary to being a service-minded vocabulary. So here are some examples of weak words versus power words. Using the word reserved instead of scheduled. I'm going to reserve this time with Dr. Jameson for you, Mrs. Jones. So can you see how that elevates the sense of value just in shifting a very common used word? I'm saying scheduling right now about a bazillion times in this podcast. But when we start thinking of reserving this time, it heightens the sense of value for the time that we are discussing. Instead of saying visit or an opening or we have a cancellation, start thinking about utilizing the words opportunity or a change in schedule and so on so that you can, again, elevate the conversation. A cleaning, a prophy, a recall. No, let's say a professional cleaning, your continuous care appointment. Elevate the sense of value. Minimizing words like just, a little, kinda, sorta, maybe. We want to completely eliminate those out of the conversation. Just wanted to call Mrs. Jones and see if maybe you'd like to come in today. No, we don't want to say any of that. Mrs. Jones, I'm reaching out to you. It appears that we have an opportunity in our schedule and we know that we need to reserve some time with Dr. Jameson for you, and we wanted to see if you were available today. Can you see how that would change the conversation immediately in terms of sense of value? So there are a few types of what I mean weak versus power words. So think about the conversations you have, the interactions you have with patients in any element of the practice, whether you're on the telephone, which is what we're talking about right now, but also even hygienists, clinical assistants, in the conversations that you're having with the patients. What can we do differently? What can we say differently to elevate their sense of value so we can build that value pillar? So building the value through verbal skills, staying in control of the conversation, giving alternatives of choice. Which would you prefer, Mrs. Jones, mornings or afternoons? And then giving 2 or 3 options that fit your blocks and your essentials of scheduling of where their preferred time of day is. That gives them a sense of control, but ultimately is also keeping you in control of when and where you see patients most appropriately for your schedule. Because we want to be aware and beware of those famous last words, I'll call you. No. We want to be in control because we know I'll call you means they're never going to call. They're never going to call. So let's try and stay in control of that conversation, partner with the patient, and use elevated words in those conversations. Remember, repetition is the key to learning. Repetition is the key to retention. Repetition is going to be the key to building that sense of value from your patients. So let's move on to the patient checkout. What I want you to think about here is, and what I like to say is, if you feel like a broken record in the patient checkout, you are probably doing it right. Because what I want you to do, whether you're the doctor and the assistant, you're going to repeat things to the patient that are in the restorative schedule, but also hygienists, this falls on you in a big, big way. When the patient comes in for that appointment, when we set them down, we want to review what they're there for, what they can expect, ask if they have any questions about the treatment they're going to be receiving that day, and then we get to work. Then at the end of the appointment, we want to repeat to them, here's what we did today. Do you have any questions about what has been provided today? If not, say, now this is what we have reserved for you at the next appointment. Here's what you can expect at that appointment. Do you have any questions for me about that? Do you see any reason why you can't make it to the time and day that we have committed together for? And then when we take them to the front, when we take them to the business team, Carrie, if I'm the business team member, Carrie, Mrs. Jones, we had a great appointment today. We already have her time reserved for her next continuous care appointment on whatever date. And we will be continuing on whatever therapy or whatever, we're going to be managing whatever great work she's doing, or we're going to be having her in for this procedure. Again, Mrs. Jones, do you have any questions for me before I leave you with Carrie to take care of the financial responsibilities? No, great. Okay, here are 2 business cards. We love having you as a patient. If you know anyone that's looking for a dental home, we would love to see them here in the practice. We'll see you next time. And then you hear the repetition that we keep saying again and again. Here's what we did today. Here's what we're doing next time. Do you have any questions about this? Do we see any reason why we can't go ahead and reserve this time? And so on. We're repeating that message again and again and again with the patient to build value, build value, build value. Utilizing patient communication software in your confirmation process and in your follow-up, if you find you're having a lot of holes, broken appointments, no-shows, maybe we need to review how you're utilizing this. If you say, yeah, but we already use text to confirm. Well, are you using the just basic, generic, you turned it on and then you don't even know what it says? So could we customize that? Do we need to change the timing and try a different timing? Do we need to do it more than once? Do you have patients that we need to incorporate an actual human being calling and making sure that appointment's getting confirmed by voice and so on? So let's make sure we are taking a look at what's working in your patient communication softwares and your confirmations and what's not, and what can we adjust or change to see if we can get a better result. Remember, no change means no change. So if what's working, what you're doing now, if it's not working, if you don't do anything differently, guess what? It's likely still going to not work. So let's try something different. Take a look, be real with yourself, have a team meeting and review what's working well and what's not, and what can we do differently. Remember, all the studies show that consumers in today's age prefer to communicate via email or text, even more by text. Now, I know you've been in my classes. I know who you are. You have an older generation of patients that do not want that. That's great. I'm so glad you know your patient demographic. Do what you need to do. Know your patients. Know the process that works for you and work the process. But remember, as we go along in time and as the world evolves and the consumer behaviors evolve, we must answer to the consumer's behaviors and preferences. And COVID really shifted a lot of that. A lot of your patients prefer some of those things that make it easier for them, that make it faster for them. Remember, customer service answers the question, how easy do we make it for our patients to get what they want or they need? And that includes how they prefer to be communicated to. So moving on from the patient checkout to, and also the elevated verbal skills, to having a solid safety net. Now, what do I mean by this? I want you to have a move forward list. Now, a lot of patient communication softwares have an ASAP list. Perhaps you're using that. Perhaps it's working well for you. What we incorporate in Jameson is also having those verbal conversations with patients to ask if they'd like to be placed on a list to be moved forward in the schedule should an opportunity arise, so that we have a list and that we're scheduling appropriately so that we are not conflicting with their insurance. So we want to make sure we're doing that. So this takes a lot of proactive forethought, but you can do this. And what this does for you is it creates a list where people have verbally said yes. Guess who's on a move forward list at their dental practice? This lady. Because if it works in my schedule and I can just get it done, I am all about it. Now that doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for some. And so they're asking if they would like to be on that, and then making sure we're making note when we reach out to people so that we don't start to abuse the yes is going to be important. So it is a system. Jameson clients, talk to your advisors about being more proactive about this, more intentional of this system, and see if you can work this better if you're not already. But at the least, if you're not utilizing the ASAP list functions in your practice management software, that could be an awesome place to start and keep track and keep record of patients that you can reach out to when there are voids in your schedule. And remember, as I mentioned before, daily huddles are very powerful when they're used correctly. And one of the steps in an effective daily huddle is to review voids in the schedule so that when when you are in the day and you can review, there may be patients that are in the schedule that are coming that we can fill some of the voids in should they have a need, or if there's a need that we know that they have that we need to discuss with them, and we could go ahead and move them into the doctor's schedule that day, hygienists and so on, using that daily huddle time to orchestrate that or talk about who do we need to speak to, or where are the needs in the schedule, so that the entire team can help our scheduling team fill those voids. So remember, strong verbal skills, that patient checkout, and having a solid safety net, those are big keys to reducing the broken appointments and no-shows and to plugging up those holes in our buckets. So what I want for you is to build the foundation of the essentials of scheduling and then utilize these keys to help you build upon that foundation for consistency in your dental days. So best of luck to you. Remember, there's a great deal of resource for you on Grow. It's grow.jmsn.com. If you have any topics for an upcoming Jameson Files podcast, please reach out to us at info@jmsn.com. We want to make sure we're providing content that is relevant to you, our Jameson Files community. So thanks for joining me once again. Be well, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Jameson Files. Visit us online at jmsn.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, or Spotify. See you next time.